7-year-old Kyron Horman just disappears.
And it's not like a case where, child wandered off from a park or got lost in the woods. This is a school.
Right, yeah.
He was last seen inside the school during school hours.
Heading towards his science project. And then...
Yeah, and that's what makes this case so difficult, right from the outset. There's a lack of
school in lockdown, a frantic search. So, do you think that affected, the way the investigation unfolded or just, how people viewed the situation in general?
Absolutely. Contentious custody battle.
Right.
The really early days of social media.
Oh, yeah.
And...
cycle, I feel like that definitely played a role. Double-edged sword, though, right? Because on the one hand, that kind of intense media, muddy the waters, create a ton of pressure, which, wastes precious time and resources.
Questions and just the constant speculation.
Forensic evidence back in 2021. But all of these cases.
Yeah.
And then most importantly, it's the resilience of
strength, in the face of such
Okay, so today we are diving into a case that I think we all probably know, but it's one of those cases that really gets me every time.
Mm-hmm.
The disappearance of Kyron Horman.
Yeah.
And it's one of those ones that really, like I said, gets me every time because it's just every parent's worst nightmare, and it's just a reminder of how quickly life can change.
Absolutely. And what makes it so perplexing is that it seems like a vanishing act. Right. He was there 1 minute and then just gone.
Completely gone. So this happened on June 4th, 2010 at Skyline Elementary School in Portland, Oregon. It was a seemingly normal day at an elementary school. They were having their science fair. There were kids and parents everywhere.
Right, just buzzing with activity.
Exactly, just like normal elementary school day, and then 7-year-old Kyron Horman just disappears.
And it's not like a case where, child wandered off from a park or got lost in the woods. This is a school.
Right, yeah.
He was last seen inside the school during school hours with his stepmother, Terry Horman.
And, that's where it gets really complicated because her account was the primary source of information early on.
Right.
She claims to have walked him to his classroom. She even saw him, heading towards his science project. And then no one else remembers seeing him after that.
Yeah, and that's what makes this case so difficult, right from the outset. There's a lack of concrete information.
Right.
You have conflicting accounts. You've got a custody battle brewing between his biological parents, Kyron Horman, and Desiree Young.
Right.
And that just adds another layer of tension on top of this already impossible situation.
So you've got this missing child, a school in lockdown, a frantic search going on, and in the background you have this custody battle that's about to explode.
Yeah.
So do you think that affected the way the investigation unfolded or just how people viewed the situation in general?
Absolutely. Imagine you're a detective in that situation, right? And you've got the stepmother who's the last one to see him. But you're also aware of this very contentious custody battle.
Right.
Did it create an immediate bias? It's hard to say definitively,
right,
but it undoubtedly added this extra layer of pressure on everyone involved.
Yeah, for sure. And then, as if things couldn't get more tangled, details about Terry's past start to emerge.
Oh, boy.
There are allegations of domestic violence in a previous divorce. Her ex-husband accused her of manipulation.
Yeah.
It's the investigation went from searching for a missing child to questioning absolutely everything and everyone connected to him.
And that's where the narrative really starts to shift.
Yeah.
We're no longer talking about a simple disappearance.
Right.
The investigation starts to focus on terrorists, her past, and her potential motives.
And while all that's going on, you have this media frenzy that's just exploding around this case.
Yeah.
This wasn't just a local story or anything.
Right.
Kyron's face was everywhere, national news, missing posters, those billboards along the highway.
It felt like the whole nation was searching.
Yeah, it did.
And, also I had to remember the timing of this.
Right.
We're talking 2010, so this is the really early days of social media.
Oh, yeah.
And information or, misinformation could spread like wildfire.
Right.
Instantly.
Yeah, for sure. And that whole, the rise of the 24/7 news cycle, I feel like that definitely played a role, too. It's a double-edged sword, though, right? Because on the one hand, that kind of intense media attention can keep a case in the spotlight, but it can also, muddy the waters, create a ton of pressure, and even like hinder the investigation.
Absolutely. And, you had everything right.
Right.
You had documentaries, podcasts, you had what felt like thousands of online forums, all dedicated to like dissecting every single detail.
Oh yeah, I remember that.
And everybody had a theory, and it wasn't always helpful.
No, not at all. I remember reading about instances where like people thought they had seen Kyron somewhere.
Oh yeah.
Like a possible sighting.
Right.
And it turned out to be completely unfounded, which like wastes precious time and resource.
Wow.
Absolutely. Not to mention what it must do to his family, like dealing with that false hope and then the constant public scrutiny.
And I think that's something that's really easy to forget, is that these aren't just captivating stories. These real lives and real families who are forever changed by these tragedies.
Yeah, that's a really good point.
And the unanswered questions and just the constant speculation, it just, adds another layer of pain to their loss.
Absolutely. And speaking of like unanswered questions, I mean, this case has them in spades. Like, did Kyron ever actually even leave the school that morning?
Right.
Was someone waiting for him?
Yeah.
Was it a stranger? Was it someone he knew? It's so easy to get lost in all the what ifs.
It really is. And I think that's what makes these types of cases so frustrating for investigators.
Yeah.
Because you have that lack of hard evidence. You've got the conflicting accounts, and then you add in just the passage of time that naturally impacts memories.
Right.
So it makes it so hard to separate fact from fiction.
They did uncover new forensic evidence back in 2021.
Right. Did that lead anywhere?
There were whispers, but the specifics have been kept very tightly under wraps.
Right.
Which is understandable.
Yeah.
But it is a glimmer of hope, I think.
Yeah.
A sign that even after all these years, that, the investigation hasn't gone cold.
It makes you think, though, what keeps it going after all this time? Is it just hope, or is there something more?
It's more than just hope.
Yeah.
It's the dedication of law enforcement.
Right.
The tireless work of, amateur sleuths who just pore over every detail of these cases.
Yeah.
And then most importantly, it's the resilience of Kyron's family.
Right.
They've never given up on this.
Yeah.
They never stopped fighting for answers.
And it is inspiring in a way, just their strength, in the face of such like unimaginable loss. And I feel like their advocacy has had this like ripple effect.
Absolutely.
You look at the organizations that have been founded in Kyron's name.
It's a renewed focus on like child safety measures in schools.
Yeah, absolutely. Kyron's case, as tragic as it is, I mean, it's forced us to confront some really uncomfortable truths about child safety.
Right.
And the vulnerabilities that exist even in places that we consider to be safe.
Yeah.
It's
true, though.
Like we were saying, schools are supposed to be a safe haven.
Right.
And I think there has been a marked increase in awareness campaigns.
Yeah.
Parental vigilance.
For sure.
Schools are implementing, much stricter security protocols.
Right. It's bittersweet, though, in a way. It's like all these changes, all these conversations sparked by this tragedy makes you wonder, if things could have been different, if those measures were in place sooner.
It's a question that haunts every case like this, right? The what ifs can be just overwhelming.
They really can.
But I think what we must do is learn from these tragedies.
Right.
And channel our collective grief into action.
Yeah, I completely agree. And at the end of the day, while we may never know for sure what happened to Kyron Horman,
right,
his story serves as just this powerful reminder to, hug our loved ones a little bit tighter, to be vigilant about our surroundings, and to never, ever stop advocating for the safety of children.
Well said.
It's a responsibility that I think we all share.
It is. We can keep his memory alive by continuing the conversation.
Yeah.
By supporting those organizations that are dedicated to finding missing children, and by working together to try to, create a world where tragedies like this are unthinkable.
I couldn't agree more. Thanks for joining me today.
Yeah. Thanks for having me.